Welcome to Break Through the Ordinary podcast. Are you committed to your future self? If you are, sibling duo Mark and Claudine Charmante will take you on a journey of self-discovery to unlock your greatest potential. Through impactful conversations with entrepreneurs, thought leaders, coaches, and healers, we will share practical tools and strategies to generate the life you envision. New episodes drop every Monday.
We have an amazing guest with us today, Xavier Lee. He's an international leadership trainer, a mindfulness teacher, and an executive coach specializing in mindfulness and high-performance mindset. Mr. Lee specializes in helping individuals and leaders create high-performance culture through enhancing emotional, social intelligence, mindfulness, and practical leadership skills. Currently, Xavier serves as head of executive programs at the facility member at Ideal Coaching Global, which is ACTP ICF accredited coaching training school. You draw on a rich global leadership experience. You've served in strategic planning and marketing positions in Fortune 100 companies such as American Express and Cigna in the U.S. and some international markets also. You're certified in mindfulness. You're a master trainer in NLP. You're an ontological coach. You're certified in transformational business coaching, language and behavior, and also limbic and wing wave coach, which I want to ask you about. I've never heard of wing wave. Mr. Lee holds an MBA from Cornell University, where he was awarded the prestigious Park Leadership Fellowship, and a BA in International Relations from the University of California, where he was awarded full Army ROTC scholarship. There's a lot more in his bio. We will put in our show notes. What an amazing individual we have here.
Yes. Honored to have you here today.
Yes.
Well, thank you. I'm so pleased to be here, Mark and Claudine.
Yeah. Perhaps you can share with us. I mean, I just learned some new things also, and this rich experience that you've had educationally and in your professional life. What was the inspiration to transition from that involvement in the executive world into executive coaching? Maybe share your journey with our listeners.
Well, thank you for that question. And let me start off by saying I'm very honored to be here, and it's great to be part of this podcast with you. So the question that you just asked me, it's I wish I had sort of this like pat answer that I could say right away. But the truth is, I actually didn't plan on becoming an executive coach. And a lot of people who stumble upon personal development, it came through because of some crisis, basically, in my personal life. So I was doing very well, actually, in the corporate setting, where I was actually getting regularly promoted and having a great life. But there was a point when I was actually working at my last big corporate job for Cigna, where I was being offered a promotion. And this was actually the fourth promotions in 2.5 years. And the position was to be a chief marketing officer. But here's the catch. The reason I was being offered that promotion was because a couple of people, my peers who were in similar position, had gotten literally sick from the stress of the job. One of them had actually passed away very recently, and he was only about a year older than I was. So I was kind of being asked to take on this position where I was to fulfill really three roles of three different people. And I thought, oh my God, I don't know if I can handle that. And I thought, geez, I mean, it's an amazing opportunity, and I was honored. But I also realized that this was over my head, and I was already starting to feel a lot of acid reflux and stress-induced sort of health issues. So I thought that this was probably not the way to go. And I was fairly recently married at that time, and my wife at the time was like saying, no, do not take this job, do not take this. So it really led me to think about what I wanted to do, and I decided to leave the corporate world. And I came back. At that time, I was actually working as an expat in in Asia. I had been working in various different countries, including Hong Kong, Singapore, Japan, and Korea. And I decided to move back to my home, which was in California. And when we came back, I think part of not knowing who I was without my corporate identity, and my wife was going through a huge cultural, also kind of a shock, because she had grown up not in the U.S. but in Asia. So for her to face like racism for the first time, for all kinds of things that she has never actually faced before, it was a big shock for her. So we went through a lot of kind of a turmoil. So I found myself about a year and a half after coming back to the U.S. being very unhappy with the job. And we ended up getting a divorce, and I was kind of in shell shock, really. And my ex-wife, I think we both actually said, how did we end up here? Going from a very sort of being a star at a corporate setting to being really unhappy and not knowing what to do. So when I was in that stage, I started really looking at some personal development. So I started taking transformational courses, and I started taking actually some like basically motivational webinars, or not webinars, motivational seminars. And one of the things that I noticed people were doing at these seminars were just being able to really motivate the audience and the crowd. And I was like, wow, what is it that they're doing? And I started as a sociology major, and I was in marketing. So this made me very curious about what is it that they're doing that they can manage the audience so well, and how they can motivate them. So I wanted to study what they studied, what they were using, not so much the content of whatever that they were selling. And then I realized what they were doing was NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. So I decided to study that, and I think I got very lucky because I ended up studying with a group of very heartfelt group of people, and they were one of the original sort of group who really innovated neuro-linguistic programming. So I studied with a very international group of people down in UC Santa Cruz, and ended up loving it. And without any thought, because I loved it so much, I just kept taking course after course. And that actually shed a lot of light for me, because I realized it gave me some answers to questions that I didn't even know that I had. So, for example, like what happened with my marriage? Like why did it spiral down so crazily and so fast? And also, what was I doing as a leader when I was in the job so that I was able to bring out some of the best in my team members, which is one of the reasons I kept getting promoted. But I didn't quite know how to teach it, and I didn't actually know exactly what I was doing. I felt like a lot of that was instinctive. And what I found out was that the stuff that I was learning, NLP, which is really a kind of type of behavioral science. It's a type of psychology, and it actually broke down a lot of these things, sort of human behavior. And I realized, oh, that's what happened with my marriage. Oh, that's why people were, performing at their best. So it gave me a lot of these answers that just was fascinating to me. And I think it really brought me back in some ways, because when I was going through that personal development phase, I was very depressed. I was lost about, who I was, and especially without, kind of losing that corporate identity and my role as a husband and as a partner. So I was in a lot of transition, and this was a beautiful way for me to sort of come back from that and get some of the answers that I knew. And I know this is kind of a long answer to your question, but what happened was I was started studying NLP, people that I would speak to, my old colleagues and my business school classmates, they would say, wow, it sounds like what you're learning is pretty amazing. Would you like to come and do some training for our team? Because, they know that I had a pretty good business background. So I actually ended up sort of organically taking up these offers, invitations to train teams in companies and start. I had people who would actually ask me for some coaching. And so I kind of started doing this without real plan in mind. And it just started happening organically like that. And so I think I never really called myself a coach until only about 2-3 years ago, because it happened so gradually and organically. I just kind of thought of myself as a business person who was taking these interesting classes. So
you
hopefully I wasn't too long-winded. Go ahead.
It's fun to learn about somebody's history and how they come to where they are and the person they become. So thank you. So you're an executive coach. What inspires people to work with you, and how do you work with them, or what trends do you find happening in executive coaching?
Right. Yeah. Well, thank you for that question. So the reason why people often will take coaching in the company setting is because it's almost like a finishing school. Usually people, when they're coaching, when they're offered coaching in a company setting, it is because they've been identified as a up-and-comer or somebody who's a star performer, and they're sort of being groomed for the next stage. So it's a perk often. And executive coaching is usually to help them really transition from a functional manager, like a functional leader, somebody who's an expert in their field, to now somebody who's more of a general leader and somebody who knows how to delegate, because those are completely different skill sets, as you can imagine. So somebody, because just because they're an expert, great engineer, or a great marketer, in order for them to join the executive ranks, they need to learn how to now let go of a lot of those functional expertise and let other people shine. So often I'm being called to help some of these executives kind of become a little bit more emotionally and socially aware, and to transition from becoming not just a great functional leader, but kind of a general leader.
Gotcha. Because you could be specialized in who you are, but that doesn't mean you have the skills, interpersonal skills, on a level I would suppose an executive needs.
Exactly. Yeah, gotcha. Exactly.
When you do that work with someone who's in this grooming to the executive level, do you notice some places where there are some, like Marquees, I think, trends, or is there patterns that they get to break through to move into and access social emotional intelligence? Also, I mean, have you noticed that over your experience and time doing this?
Right. Yeah. So one of the things that I notice is that although even the clients themselves, and often the perception of executive coaching is that it's focused on really the business context. What I found out is that that's where we might start. But usually, you think the best kind of coaching is when people become fully transparent and it becomes much more holistic. And it often becomes actually life coaching. So not just about talking about business or solving specific business issues, but it's really about how are they dealing with their family? How are they dealing with the relationships, right? Because it's such an important part of our aspect about our life. What are some of the beliefs that they have? So it really actually becomes much more than just solving specific business context, business issues. So I say at the higher levels, there really isn't that much different from business coaching or life coaching.
I have a curiosity here, right? Because
Sure.
you certainly hear of executive coaching, and I know that you lead a track at that at Ideal Coaching Global.
Right.
Is that what the corporations do? Do they know that that's what is going to happen, and it's a quiet, like, yeah, here we're grooming this person, move that up? Or do the leaders actually know, like, right, to get there, there's going to need to be some breakthroughs or shift in their own patterning of that person to elevate so they can step into that? Like, Because I think there's a misperception sometimes. People are like, oh, executive, oh, they're talking business. Like you said, it's business context. Is there some of that understanding? Because this is a little different than like I choose a coach. This is an organization. So it's a triangle, and I know there's confidentiality, but is there that expectation in the organization, or they don't want anything to do with it? Like, it doesn't matter to them. Just
yeah, that's a great question, Claudine. The truth is, I think a lot of the executives who themselves have gone through coaching recognize that yes, there's a merging, because what happens is one of the biggest requests that I get, because usually it's not the client themselves that I deal with. Usually I'm dealing with a sponsor, usually the manager of the client themselves, who's sponsoring the sort of rising star to get the coaching, right? And so a lot of the times the request I get is, he's great or she's great, but maybe a little bit more gravitas, a little bit more executive presence, right? So, which is actually, as you know, Claudine, it's really an ontological question, right? So, how are they being? So, one of the things that we find is that when you deal with the more of a holistic issues, and they learn how to be comfortable and they gain that self-awareness, that they do become more weighty in their presence because they become more authentic. So a lot of the, like I said, sponsors or people in high positions who've had coaching themselves or who've had enough wisdom, they recognize that. They know that it's not all about business, but they know that it's also good for business, because what happens is people who are authentic, we know this from many studies, that authentic leaders are more efficient, they're more effective. And people, you probably heard this before, but people don't quit companies. They quit their managers. So a lot of times, when you have leaders who are great at empathy, great at being authentic, and great at just being present in who they are, then it attracts and allows companies to retain better quality of not just the manager, but all the team underneath them. And it allows them to perform better. So there's a tangible evidence and results that come from people who learn how to become better leaders, more empathetic, more authentic.
Which is good for all present. Of us. If in business yes. and corporations keep developing this, because most people think in corporations, people are just money hungry. Nobody cares about anybody. It's just to hear this is really nice, because if business becomes empathy and understanding and holistic, you don't see the people as just their business, their money makers. That's it. It creates a nicer world for all of us. And I believe it would shift as the future comes. Can you give us examples how you would work, like a little more detail on how you would work with an executive coach? Because I understand that they're seeing something in this person, but you have to take them there. They may not. So how do you step in and what practices or how do you work with that person to bring that out of them?
Sure. So I'll give you a kind of a funny example, if I may. There's a story of where I got a call while I was driving one day, and it was from a company that I was working with, and his first sort of sentence was, "Okay, you're one of the executive coach that I'm supposed to interview, because I'm being asked to get executive coaching, so I have to go through. You're one of the 5 executive coaches that I have to interview, and I've read your resume, and to be honest, this is just a protocol, since I don't think I'm really that interested in you reading your resume." And I started laughing, and I said, why is it that why did you think we're not going to work out? And he said, well, for one thing, you're like a master NLP guy, and I read all about NLP in Wikipedia, and it sounds like bullshit. And so I started laughing, and I said, well, yeah, there's actually a lot of noise out there about NLP. So I sure. And he says, and you've done, and you've been in like more marketing, and I'm a hardcore scientist. So I don't know if this is going to be a good fit. So I said, okay, I get your point. Thank you for sharing with me. I said, would you mind if we spent 5 minutes though, just talking about why like NLP literally saved my life? Because I'm also a very skeptical guy. And I told him about the story. And then, so he and I were laughing, and 10 minutes later, he literally says to me, okay, I don't have to talk to anybody else. You're it. I'm going to hire you as my executive coach. And I started laughing again, and I said, that's great. Now I wasn't manipulating you or anything, but do you want to know how the rapport was created and how you changed your mind in 15 minutes so drastically? And he says, yeah, that would be a really great skill. So that was actually me starting coaching before coaching. Like it was formal. So I actually set the context. I created the rapport. And one of the things that we decided to do is like, listen, coaching is not like therapy. And sometimes what happens is there's a concept called anchoring where people they learn how to be a specific, they learn how to be in a specific way at a certain setting, but then they don't know how to be that kind of a person when they're in a different setting. So I don't want to just have coaching sessions with you in your office. Do you mind if I, go to the meetings with you and go for walks? And that's where, we'll have our coaching session. And he thought, okay, sounded unusual, but it turns out he loved it. So we would actually have coaching sessions while we walked, and then I would sit in his class, and then I would give him some feedback about, the great things that he was doing, and then the jerky things that he was doing. And then, so he got some honest feedback in live action. So that's how, that would be sort of how I would work with somebody, by kind of shaking things up and taking them to different, letting that person be comfortable with this one type of setting.
I just have to say, I love that, because I've daydreamed about I've coached also. If you did it in somebody's life, you really see the real thing. Because if you're sitting and just reporting, doing the therapeutic kind of way, you're getting their perception, but you're not seeing how they really live it. Is it really the way they're living it? So I love that. I think that's amazing.
Yeah, you get to really see the embodiment, how they show up. I have to say, I also had never thought of the changing of the setting. Right, our being changes, right? It's a state change. And so, do I have the flexibility to show up differently, or do I not? Or even seeing that, I'm even thinking in my own, right? Like it happens over Zoom. They're sitting in the living room or their office. And I have to be honest, so am me. I'm in the same chair. What would that look like if we did a Zoom walk, or a phone call instead of, and each of us, even digitally doing something different. So thank you for that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I have done it actually over phone, where we're both walking, and it's a little harder on Zoom because then you have to watch each other. But on phone, it's definitely possible where you're walking together. And then there's also a physiological reason why it's actually better than just sitting. Part of it is because when you're making eye contact with somebody, people tend to be more guarded. Whereas if you're looking in the same direction, they tend to be they tend to be more vulnerable. And they tend to suspend their judgments and suspend their criticism, self-criticisms even. And also when you're moving, think about it, you're moving your body, so there's more blood flowing through your brain and your body. And so people tend to be in a better mood, and they tend to be less judgmental.
I'm just wondering, this might work even if you're having a disagreement in your relationship or with somebody, to walk and instead of face to face where that you're going to have walls. And this is interesting. You're just bringing some ahas or possibilities that are different.
That's actually a brilliant takeaway, Mark, because absolutely. I think one of the best things that you can sometimes do is, rather than, with a spouse or a partner, let's say you had some conflict, for you to just walk together and look at the same direction. get your body moving, especially if it's in nature. It's a great way to do that.
There's a gift. You just gave us a gift. Thank you.
Yeah, I was actually even thinking if we're walking together and looking at something, how interesting, because I may not see the same thing. I may see tree, but my partner can see, oh my God, flowing tree. I could say, oh, it's just a red tree, right? Because that's exactly what the argument is. Like, right, I see it this way, you see it this way. And, right, like, it's such a great metaphor.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Can I actually jump in and share something with you? Maybe this might be something that your audience also might find valuable. So, in Ideal Coaching Global, the coaching school that I teach in, one of the exercises that I do is called walking in someone else's moccasins. Now, I learned this from Robert Dilts, who was my NLP teacher and mentor, amazing teacher. But one of the things that's beautiful about this exercise is you walk with someone, but you walk just like that person. You mimic the other person it can be 15 minutes, it can be half an hour, even longer if you want. And then you have the other person do the same with you, where they follow exactly like the way you're walking. And it's a bizarre thing, but what it allows you to do is you really start to see the other people, the way other people sees the world. Not only that, but you can often even start to feel how they feel. So, you can even feel certain pains that other person might be feeling if you're actually breathing the same way, walking the same way. So you get a tremendous sense of not only empathy, but just understanding and connection by just doing that exercise. So that would be a great way for somebody who wanted to understand somebody a little bit better or to create a better connection with someone to do that.
Thank you. I forgot that exercise. Certainly, I love your process of change, levels of change.
Oh, yes, levels of process and change.
Yeah, that is an extraordinary, but I forgot about the walking in moccasins because you're right. It's almost like a biochemical empathy also, right? Because you see their gait and how they move and what they touch. And, I remember looking, like I may have not looked at that thing, but the person I was walking in, they were more in tune to a certain thing than I was. And it opens up another worldview without language.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Very much so. Yeah, thank you for sharing that with us.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for listening and your beautiful takeaway that you got out of it.
Yes.
Very fast.
I can remember that. Yeah. The other piece I want to open our conversation up to, because is another place that you introduced me to a concept, and I think we're getting a lot more press about masterminds. You see them being advertised, much more in Facebook ads now. But perhaps you can share with us what is a mastermind and what's the benefits that participants take away. And I do believe, I'm not sure if you still lead them, and that's why I'm asking that question. I know at one time in your career you were. Sure.
Yeah, it's something that, again, it's one of these strange things I sort of stumbled into, and then it became, a lot bigger. I started actually informally hosting masterminds when I was first learning NLP, because the main reason because I wanted to practice them, and I had read that the best way to really learn something is to teach other people, right, or to have a study group. So I thought, it'd be great to have a group of people. Not only that I can practice with, but if I can teach it to them simply, it means I really know it, right? So I ended up actually hosting a group of men. This was, almost 10 years ago, when I was still kind of learning a lot of NLP stuff, and this was before I started getting into coaching, where we met once a week on a regular basis to really practice, and then I would teach stuff that I was learning. And it turned out to be fantastic. I mean, I learned so much, and people were, people got really bonded and connected. And I remember we did this one exercise called the the Disney excuse me, Disney process where we were trying to imagine and then basically plan out a future in a specific way, kind of like the Walt Disney did it. In fact, it was modeled after Walt Disney. And one of the member was an entrepreneur. He had a couple of real estate companies, and he was already doing very well. He was in his excuse me. He was making very high six figures, and he decided that he wanted to make 20 million, start to make 20 million in, I think 6 or 7 years. I think that was the original plan. We did this Disney process, and then he was able to do it in 3 years. So we was like, wow, it works, So it was a great way for us to realize that the original idea of Mastermind, which is that multiple brains working on a problem is better than just one brain. And having an accountability partner or peer group it can amplify the success of others. Now, this is not a new concept by any means, as you know. People have been doing this for years and years. And in mindfulness, in Buddhist circles, we call that the Sangha, the community or the fellow people you take the journey with, right? So I started I had these sort of informal masterminds, and it became a little bit more formal because I realized when people didn't have any real stake in the ground, they tended to be a little bit more less committed. So I started actually charging people, and then I would actually give most of it back if they fulfilled most of their requirements. I just wanted them to come and not have us start over meeting after meeting. And I found that the more I charged, the more committed people became. So that's how it sort of came to be. And then I was invited by one of my good friend who was invited to be part of a very high-end mastermind group. They were paying about $25,000 a year to be a member of the mastermind group. And then he was complaining to me about it. And then I said, well, okay, I could see why it's not working. And I gave him some tips. And then next thing I knew, he was inviting me to join to be the co-facilitator for the offshoot of this very high-end mastermind group, which people were paying a lot of money for. And it was a really interesting concept because this was a mastermind group where everybody had actually already achieved their first level of success. They had either made their first, whatever it is, million, or they had formed their company, they had become CEOs, they had wrote their best-selling book. But then the funny thing happens. They're happy for about 6 to 9 months, and then a year later, they're like, okay, now what? And then they all kind of get a little depressed. So it was this very group that had formed, and they had invited me to be one of the facilitators. We had three of us who were facilitating, and from that group, we were able to actually really practice a lot of the ideas that I had gathered from my informal groups, and kind of see if it worked or not. See if it stuck. And fortunately, found out that a lot of people got a lot of value out of it. In fact, I remember a couple of people coming up to me and saying, "Oh my God, I just made the whole year's investment in this mastermind group in our first meeting here today because this guy just saved me $35,000." So it was a great experience and opportunity to be able to host successful mastermind groups like that. And I realized that it's really one of the best ways, whether you're meditating or practicing, it's great to have a community. It makes you much more powerful. It makes your success more likely. So, I'm a big believer in power of a group and collective wisdom and masterminds.
So you're leading them now also. Are you leading them now?
Yeah, well, I unfortunately had a minor stroke in December, so I find that I don't have the energy, and now I'm actually a lot more lucid, but I definitely did have a little bit of cognitive impairment for the first several months. So I had suspended it for now. We used to run them for Ideal Coaching Global, and it's been very successful. We've always actually had more demand than spaces available. But I've actually asked to pause it for current generation and maybe for another several months. But I'm hoping to start it again in probably by middle of next year or so.
Okay, so that has me think, because I'm thinking I'm starting a men's group. I'm going to be actually a participant, which is nice for a change. But I was thinking, you said masterminds is a great way in community, and I'm thinking I have to find a mastermind. So how would somebody go about finding the mastermind for them, or the right fit, or what's going to work for them? Because I'm thinking of myself, I own a contracting management, and I'm not saying I want to be in that kind of mastermind just with builders or something, or contractors, but like, how do you find what the fit is and what it looks like? And
yeah, that's a fantastic question. I'm going to start by saying that there's really no one way, and there's no one mastermind group model that works, right? There's multiple models, and I think they all have their uses. It depends on what is it that you're particularly looking for, Mark. But what I do is when I interview prospects for our mastermind group at Ideal Coaching Global, I ask for 3 C's. And one is, the first thing that I look for are people who are what I call who have contributing mindset. So imagine if you are with a group of very smart people, and let's just say you have a group of 10 people. And there are 2 equal groups of 10 people, and one group, and they're equally smart, equally experienced, and they have great network, and all of that's the same. But imagine now you go to Group A, and the Group A, they're all asking, okay, what's in it for me? What do other people have that I can use? Which is kind of how most networking kind of works, right? And unfortunately, how most people sort of go about building a community group. But now imagine going to a group, the second group, and everyone there, and this is kind of similar to that mastermind group that I was telling you about. Whether because they've achieved their success, or maybe because they're more empathetic than others, or maybe they're more altruistic, but for some reason, even though they have the same experience, education, quality, they all are dying to share. They're really willing. What they want to do is they want to help others. So their question that they ask is not what's in it for me, but the question is, how can I help others here? How can I make others successful? Now, the experience between those 2 groups, even if they're exactly the same in education, wealth, resources, is going to be that your experience between those 2 groups are going to be quantum levels different. I mean, it's just going to be exponentially different. In Group B, which is kind of what I saw in the mastermind group that I was running, people were just so willing to contribute. They were so happy with other people's success that the whole group, as they say, the ship rising, right? It was just everybody became incredibly successful, and people became very tight. Whereas I think if you are talking about going into a group where there's no real lot of, the trust is so sort of normal, and sharing is kind of normal, and everyone's kind of, their first interest is really themselves. It's interesting. They actually get less it's almost like, what they want most isn't delivered because of their mindset.
That's really great. Thank you.
Yeah. So that's the first C. And the second C I look for is commitment. Because no matter how amazing you are in wanting to contribute, if you don't show up, it doesn't do any good. So I look for commitment. So those are probably the first two important C's. And the third C that I look for is, because trust and confidentiality is so important, I look for people who can keep things confidential. So if they're, if they don't know how to keep secrets, or at least in a certain context, then that doesn't work because it breaks the group's trust. So that's what I look for in both any kind of group that I want to be with, and also in the groups that I, host or organize. So maybe that might work for you, Mark. 3 C's, the contribution. Yeah.
That was great. No, because I thought if I'm looking for a group, I want to go with the attitude, how can I contribute here? And how is everybody contributing? You made it so clear that I wouldn't want to get in a group that people aren't just thirsty to contribute to each other, and that I want to go with that same attitude. And that would be a great sign in an interview, or if you go in there to just see how the group operates. Nobody's contributing, or people aren't really excited about, I don't want to be here.
No, they're not open to feeding you. Like, we're not there just to serve ourselves.
That's great for our listeners, for me, thank you.
With that, and I just want to touch on it quickly, is, so we have this executive coaching mastermind, and this other place that you also bring it, and I don't know, maybe you do bring it into your masterminds and your executive coaching, is your mindfulness. You've mentioned it several times, even not just in your bio, but your own examples. How does that play a role with working with clients as well as your own personal life? But, how do you use that or encourage that with working with your clients?
I really appreciate you asking that, Claudine, because I was trying to figure out how I could work that into the podcast. So you asking me that makes this a lot easier. Thank you. Yeah, well, here's how I discovered mindfulness and meditation, why I think it's important. So when I was learning NLP, it was fantastic. I learned all these amazing tools about how to change your state, how to be resourceful, how to model people, how to understand what people are doing. And I saw these other people doing it too, And then, one of the things that I did was I kind of used all these tools and techniques I learned to speed through my pain, because I still had a lot of pain through divorce. And so I learned all these techniques, like to be happy all the time. And I went, whoosh. And then a couple of years later, it all came back and bit me in the butt, because I didn't learn the lessons that I needed to learn. I mean, there's a reason why we go through some of these pains and emotions, right? And so that's the time when I actually decided to take meditation course that was a little bit different from, psychology and more cognitive stuff that I was doing. And so I spent 10 days in a Vipassana meditation course. And what I got from it was one of the most difficult things I've done, but one of the most profound, because I came back with what a true glimpse into self-awareness. Because I thought I knew myself through NLP and psychology and all of that stuff. But I realized, unless you really sit with yourself, both with the positive and the negative, and just have compassion for yourself, and just observe yourself in silence, it's very, very, very difficult to really truly get to know yourself. So one of the realizations I came is that what I was doing with the stuff I learned from NLP was not ecological, in the sense that there were certain things that that I thought I knew at a cognitive level, but I didn't really get at a more somatic level. And I think mindfulness really helped me with that, with both understanding myself and understanding others. I mean, there was I just remember after 10 days of meditation, just hugging strangers with such great connection. Even though we never even talked, even though there was nothing cognitively that we had shared that you could have sort of seen as, okay, these are our similarities, right? But just going through this same process of experience, and this is that when I first really understood the word Sangha, why that's so important. So this mastermind, concept of people who are sharing that journey with you. Just by somebody being on that same path, you have this amazing sense of empathy, and you have compassion, and you also feel this joy knowing that you're not alone. So I think mindfulness brings in all of that, but I think most of all, it brings that self-awareness that helps you to really build that foundation for emotional intelligence and social intelligence. And it allows you to know that you're not just your feelings, that you always have a choice.
So, our listener, not everybody is going to do or wants to do Vipassana, though it's a pretty amazing experience from what I've understood. I'd like to take those 10 days. What in real life, like strategies or practices, can people start to do to become mindful, in our everyday life?
Yeah, thank you. Our breath is something that never leaves us, at least as long as we're alive, right? So it's free. So one of the things that I think we can be very mindful is about just paying attention to our breath sometimes and just practicing mindful breathing, even for 3 breaths, and I think there's a reason why pretty much all traditions, whether it's Christian or Buddhism or any of these yogic traditions, they all go back to breathing, and because one, like I said, it's always there, but it's opens us up, having the oxygen, a certain way. I think it nourishes us and makes us mindful. In fact, if the audience is willing, what we can do is we can just do a very simple breath technique that actually, I'm not sure who invented it, but I know Dr. Weir, Weir, he promotes it in his YouTube, and I've been teaching it since I learned it. It's called a 4-7-8 breath. It's a very simple way of breathing and just resetting your basically central nervous system so that you become more calm very quickly. Would that be something you think we could do? Okay. All right. Sure. So this is a great practice. Like I said, if you're starting to feel panic or anxious, or if you just want to reset yourself before a meeting, it's also great for going to sleep. So it's very simple. All we're going to do is we're going to breathe in for 4 with your mouth closed. If you can, try to have your tongue sort of touching the top, the tip of your tongue touching the roof of your mouth. And then you're going to breathe in for 4 counts. And then you're going to hold for 7. And then you're going to breathe out for 8. But for the breathing out part, you're going to go ahead and open your mouth and breathe out kind of a little bit loudly, just so that people, you can really feel the effect of breath. And we're going to do this for 3 rounds. So I want you to go ahead and just notice where you are and just pay attention to how you're feeling. And then let's try it all together, and then we'll see if there's a difference. So I'd like you to go ahead and sit up comfortably with your back straight if you can, but sit in a comfortable way. So take a deep breath in with your mouth closed. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. Good. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Breathe out. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Beautiful. Good. So just remember to breathe in and hold with your mouth closed and breathe out with your mouth open. Let's try it 2 more times. I'll guide you 1 more time, and then the 3rd time we'll all do it together in silence. Okay, take a deep breath in. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Breathe out. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Great. 1 more time at our own pace. I'm going to just go ahead and breathe in normally for just a few more seconds. Just take a normal breath in and normal breath out. Now, if you're like me, I already feel the difference. Even with that 1 deep breath, I feel calmer. You can probably even tell that my voice feels a little bit slower and deeper. So hopefully you can feel some of that difference. So this is a great practice, just being mindful about your breath. And it's a great way to go to sleep. Also, just if you have any insomnia problems.
Heart rate feels like it's going slower. Yeah.
I'm like, how am I going to do the podcast now?
I gotcha. Thank you. And I'm really going to invite our listeners, as part of their call to action and embodiment of this conversation, that's my suggestion, is to do the 4-7-8 breath. I don't know if you two are in agreement with that.
Yeah, for a minute. Take a minute.
Do three,
at least 3.
and just be in check before and after. I mean, you could do longer than 3. And it's just...
Yeah, well, when you're starting, I actually suggest you don't do more than 5.
Thank you. Okay, so...
Yeah, because if you're not used to it, some people can hyperventilate. So just stick with 3 to 5 for the first, when you're first starting.
So 3 to 5 cycles of the 4-7-8 breath, and post about what your experience was before, after, anything you want to share, notice, put it on your Facebook page, tag us. I'd really love to hear and we'll do that also.
Yeah,
we
try
participate
it before sleep, or maybe a couple times during the week, or like do it for 3 or 4 days, see how it feels. Yeah,
excellent. Thank you very much.
I do feel relaxed.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Do you have any other words of wisdom that you'd like to leave with our listeners? And that was a great gift, so I'm not asking for more. I'm saying if there's anything else that you want to contribute in this moment.
Well, I thought your questions were really words of wisdom that we were kind of creating together, so I'm not sure what else I can share with you. Maybe one thing that's helpful for some of my coaching clients is that, often 50% of our waking time, we're actually having a little mind chatter. And studies have shown that a lot of that actually is self-criticism. So a lot of times we're spending a lot of energy criticizing ourselves. So my kind of suggestion that I found to work really well with my coaching clients is try to come up with self-compassion and curiosity. And a simple way to do that is if you have a pet name, maybe a name your parents or somebody used to call you when you were a kid, every time you hear yourself being self-critical, just gently ask, call yourself by your pet name, and just say, hey, I love you, or just say something a little bit encouraging, just like you would say to your favorite child, and that will release a lot of energy for you. I've found that works really well for me, and some of my coaching clients have told me that little simple trick has actually really helped them a lot. So
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Love and compassion. You don't get enough of that. We're going to transition really quickly into fast fire, and it's really about one word to one sentence, what comes to mind when we ask this question. So I'm going to ask you, how do you define love?
Oneness.
Who or what person was the most influential in your life and why?
Oh, I think there are many teachers who were so powerful and impactful to me. Robert Dilts, who was the NLP teacher, Judith Delosier, who was also my NLP teacher, Claudio Naranjo, who recently passed away. He was founder of like the Enneagram, but also an amazing human being who I think really understood that a lot of times what gets us in trouble is our own filters. And Steve Gilligan is also another amazing teacher who gave me some tough love when I needed the most, and sometimes we need, that he told me, oops, that's not one fire question. Sorry for the rapid fire. I'll stop there.
2 books that you would not want to live without.
Little Prince by Antoine Saint-Exupéry, because I think it's got such wonderful fables about what it means to connect with people and the wonderment and curiosity of a child that I think a lot of times we lose. And my other favorite book was actually Journey to the West. It's a Chinese classic about a monkey king who accompanies. It's the first road trip. It's a road travel story, and it's a beautiful story about how they overcome all these monsters. It's like a hero's journey story. That's
Thank you.
1,500 years old.
What do you think? What is your superpower?
I think I see patterns pretty quickly, and I can break down complex issues into something simple that can be explained.
Right.
Ooh, that's a good superpower. Yeah.
Thank you.
I want to thank you tonight, Xavier, for being a yes and being here and sharing your essence. I've missed you. Xavier has a nickname called X-Man, and forever.
Thank you.
And you've been a great teacher in my life. So I thank you for sharing space and time. It's always great to see you. Always, and this is extra bonus to be able to have this connection tonight. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Claudine and Mark. It was my honor and pleasure to be here, and thank you for your beautiful questions. And this is a great work that you're doing. And it's a pleasure to meet you, Mark.
Same here. A lot of wisdom. I mean, you gave me some nuggets tonight to look at. I like it. Thank you.
And I will just say, there's not a time that I don't do the loving kindness meditation it's your voice. It is so you. It doesn't matter when I do it or if I hear it, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's Xavier. And so I thank you. You do stay with me. I will say that. You have stayed with me. So thank you for that gift, because that's a beautiful meditation.
Thank you so much, Claudia.
You're welcome.
Well, love you both.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our pleasure.
The gift.
And thank you for this. And I want to thank our listeners for listening to the Break Through the Ordinary podcast. We hope you've enjoyed this episode and our deep dive into mindfulness, strategies, I'm going to say awareness and connection. And so may this wisdom allow you to live an extraordinary life. If you'd like to support the podcast, please leave a rating and share with others on social media and post about it. And you can catch our latest episodes by following us at the BTO Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Until the next time, thank you and have a great evening.